Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NOACA TLCI, or Transportation for Livable Communities Initiative Applicant Workshop. Just so you know, we are having some technical difficulties. I just want to know, Rob, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So you can see the PowerPoint presentation. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move through here. Just to get started here, I know Leah Telepak is supposed to be joining soon, but she was having some issues with logging in through here. So hopefully she'll be able to join, but I'll try to pick up the slack on her behalf where I can. So that being said, introductions, just so everyone knows, Leah Telepak is the program manager for the TLCI program solicitation. And so she is the main contact here at NOACA for the program. And then I am Jim Thompson. I am the capital programs manager here at NOACA. And so a little bit about what I do is I work in NOACA's programming division, mostly supporting our capital programs. Such as TLCI, I'm also supporting our CMAQ program, Congestion Mitigation Air Quality, and then our Enhanced Mobility program, or Section 5310, as well as our TIP development. So that includes other funding programs such as Surface Transportation Block Grant, Carbon Reduction Program, and Transportation Alternatives Program. And I'm joined here today by Rob Uhlhorn. So Rob, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Rob Uhlhorn. I am the Transportation Planning Manager in NOACA's Transportation Planning and Engineering Division. I manage most of the TLCI planning study projects, as well as like other active transportation initiatives like the Street Supplies Program. And so for most things active transportation, I'm the point guy for that.
Great, thank you, Rob. So just as a reminder, this presentation is being recorded. So, this will be available later on our website. The chat function is disabled, but you can go through the Q&A function to ask questions to us. And so with that, I'll be monitoring that and try to either respond in the chat or respond in real time. Some questions we may want to wait until later in the presentation. So we'll just kind of try to do the best in terms of what's relevant when it comes to answering the questions. And then that being said, we will have a recording as well as a PDF of our presentation available on our NOACA TLCI webpage. So it's noaca.org/TLCI. So I'm going to go ahead here. So this is our agenda for today. So first and foremost, we're going to go over the TLCI program, and we're going to discuss, what it is and kind of a little bit of the history of the program, just so all applicants or potential applicants and stakeholders have a good understanding of the program. We are then going to go over the TLCI policy objectives, which have been set by the NOACA Board of Directors. We're going to go over the funding, both historical and current funding for the program. We're going to go over eligibility, project eligibility, as well as applicant eligibility. We're going to provide various examples of projects, both previous planning studies, as well as implementation projects that have been awarded by the NOACA board. We're then going to go over the application process for both the planning studies program and the implementation program, and then the selection process as well. And then lastly, we'll kind of finish up with schedule so everyone's on the same page in terms of what you can expect through our application process, followed by our staff evaluation process, and as we take things through to our subcommittees, committees, and the NOACA board. And then lastly, we will pause for general questions. Once again, you can ask questions throughout, but if you'd like to ask them at the end, that's okay. Okay. So a little bit about the TLCI program. So the intention of the program is to provide livability in Northeast Ohio communities through a transportation lens. So this program does support NOACA's long-range transportation plan, as well as our strategic plan. It does provide federal funding. So this is a federally funded program to local communities in the 5-county NOACA region. And also, we want to make sure that we're not just doing planning for planning's sake. We want to make sure that we are supporting projects that can be implemented, whether through NOACA funding, local funding, state funding, federal discretionary funding, what have you. So we really want to make sure that these planning studies are strong enough that they're able to support recommendations that lead to implementation. And the TLCI program was actually authorized by the NOACA Board of Directors back in May of 2004. So this program is now 21 years old. So that's it's been around for quite a long time, and I know it's well beloved throughout the NOACA region. As mentioned, NOACA is comprised of two main components. We have the Planning Studies program, and we have the Implementation program. So Planning Studies awards do support planning projects that are supported around transportation issues or problems, and that can, supposedly support, stronger neighborhoods and safer connections for all modes of transportation. And though the program started, the Board of Directors did launch the program in 2004. The first round of funding applications actually occurred in 2006. So you'll hear some of these different years, but it's really about our process, to get the program off the ground from the beginning. And then the implementation program actually started back in 2015. And so the intention of the implementation program is to kind of look at those short and midterm projects that are lower dollar, that can be constructed quicker than some of those larger, higher dollar, longer term recommendations that come out of planning studies. So essentially the implementation program kind of came out of the guise of like a middle ground between a large construction project and something that can be done more near term. Okay, so with that being said, over the past couple of rounds, NOACA has only solicited projects for TLCI implementation funding, but now we are actually accepting for both the planning studies round and also for the implementation program. And so that being said, we're going to hammer this home for you all today, but we want to make sure that you are going to the NOACA, the TLCI webpage on the NOACA website. And so this is just one of our various TLCI web pages that includes lists of previous awards, and it also will take you to links of like where the planning studies are actually listed on our website. So, okay. And then this is the main TLCI website here. It is current, so this is an image from what it looks like today, which shows our 2026 program solicitation there at the top. I will note that the applications are found at the links here and here. So the first one is the planning studies and the second one is the implementation. We'll go into that as we move forward. Okay, so a little bit more about the history of the program. As mentioned, the planning study program began first with the first round of projects awarded by the Board of Directors back in 2006. And so essentially between 2006 and 2022, NOACA has supported 142 planning studies with about a $10.1 million NOACA investment over that period of time. So that's quite a bit of investment for local planning, if you will, in our region. And then, as I said, the implementation program was created back in 2015. And so for the first actually 11 years of the program, 2015 through 2025, we supported 97 implementation projects with a $28.7 million NOACA investment. So that's quite a bit. That program has occurred every year annually since 2015. And in general, the NOACA program is an annual solicitation. Sometimes we have, based on certain reasons, we may delay the program by a quarter or something like that, but it's typically an annual solicitation. Okay, and then just so you know, our current NOACA policy was actually adopted by the Board of Directors in January of 2015. What this did was it kind of firmed up what the program would be moving forward from that date. I know there was a thorough study of the program and its impacts around the region between 2011 and 2014. And so that culminated in the new board policy for TLCI in 2015. It did show the positive impact of planning awards and maintain the planning studies program, but it did create the implementation program. The policy also lays out our TLCI program objectives, eligibility of both project types and eligible project sponsors. project selection, the funding, as well as the project sponsor responsibility. Okay, so the TLCI policy does have 6 objectives that we follow in terms of evaluating potential TLCI projects and as well through the planning study process. So they are to develop transportation projects that provide more travel options through complete streets that increase safety and support positive public health impacts. Also to promote reinvestment in underutilized properties through development supported by multimodal transportation systems, to support economic development through place-based transportation recommendations and connect these proposals with existing assets. And then the other 3 are to ensure the benefits and burdens of both growth, change, and transportation projects are distributed fairly by ensuring accessibility and supporting areas of persistent poverty. This one I would like to note is kind of in flux because of recent federal executive orders, which have kind of said that federal dollars should not be tied so much to DEI and environmental justice. So we did have some language previously for this objective that was tied more to environmental justice and equity. And I should note that the NOACA Board of Directors is going to be making some changes to some of our policies moving forward, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But so this one bullet point has been changed for the interim by NOACA as we go through this application round. And then the 5th one is to enhance regional cohesion by supporting collaboration between regional partners, and then to provide people with safe and reliable transportation choices that enhance their quality of life. Okay, so a little bit more about the TLCI program budget. We do have a $2 million annual program budget. So what that means is that, and this is per the NOACA TLCI policy, is that at least $1.5 million each year is available for the TLCI implementation projects with a minimum total project cost of $100,000. And that's to make sure that we don't have too much of an administrative burden on the project sponsor, NOACA, and ODOT when it comes to managing these construction projects, because there is kind of a heavy lift with that. And then secondarily here, we have $500,000, up to $500,000 available for TLCI planning studies. So that is our total budget for planning studies. In the past, we've awarded less than that. And then essentially, if the planning study budget isn't fully exhausted in 1 year, whatever's left over will go towards that year's implementation program. So for example, if we award $300,000 in planning studies to various applicants, then the $200,000 that's left over will go towards the implementation program that round. And then we also, this is new, have a minimum total project cost of $100,000 for planning studies. That was not previously the case. We did not have a minimum, but now we felt that it made sense to have a minimum of a total project cost of $100,000 as well. And then there is no funding cap on how much project sponsors can request. That being said, we do have the total budget of the program. We don't recommend that you request the total budget, not that you can't. But if past is precedent, we typically do provide funding to a handful of projects each round. Okay, and with that, awards will be made up to 80% of the total project cost. And so this is a federally funded program. So there's your standard 80% federal share, where you have to provide a typical 20% local share to match that. But per NOACA policy, local match requirements can be waived or partially waived in alignment with our policies. And this ties back to NOACA's toll revenue credit policies and policies that are tied to that. But that being said, the NOACA Board of Directors is actually going, we expect them to hopefully provide some direction on various policies at their September 12th board meeting. Regarding toll revenue credits, and that kind of ties back to our environmental justice policy, diversity, equity, inclusion, and other policies that are tied to those, such as our TLCI policy and our toll revenue credit policy. So that being said, we still expect to have toll revenue credits eligible for certain communities. We just don't know what that's going to look like until our board of directors acts. So we will know that as of September 12th. If you expect or are seeking 100% federal funding using toll revenue credits this round, and you're not sure how to interpret, whatever the board policy is as of September 12th, please get in touch with us and we can help guide you through that process. So that it will at least give you up to nearly a month before the applications are due to decide how you're going to provide your local match, as well as what you will request for when it comes to NOACA's federal dollars. So I should note then that we really will not have an answer until after September 12th. So, but we don't expect that most of our communities will have huge changes. There will be some changes, but we don't expect at this point a lot of changes. Okay. So that being said, we also want to make sure that you are aware of NOACA's Complete and Green Streets policy. This was approved by the NOACA Board of Directors in 2020. And this actually went through a lot of discussion at NOACA Advisory Council, subcommittee, and committee levels before it was finalized. But really the intention here is to look for completely connected streets for all modes of transportation, to make sure that the network is strong and there's access for individuals, whether they are using cars, transit, or multimodal modes of transportation, bicycles, pedestrians, and so on. It's also to support sustainable transportation modes that support, the safety and health of all users. We also want to make sure that safety is a strong component of this. And then on top of that, we have the green part, which really does look at the natural hydraulic function of the region's watersheds, as well as providing flexibility of different types of streets and areas for users. So our funding is eligible for Complete and Green Streets components. Sometimes you'll have to talk to NOACA staff when you're scoping something like this. But if you have questions about this, let us know. But we really do want to make sure you know about this policy. And so with that, we do have some examples here that are provided from the policy. If you are doing curb bump outs, for example, you may have the opportunity for moving the curb to provide, some more area for stormwater storage, or to plant street trees, or native plantings, or plantings that will, take up water or restore soils. So there are a lot of opportunities. I also should mention permeable pavement, which, if you want to do that for a construction project, we'd have to talk about that and see what's capable through ODOT's design guidelines. But these are things that are obviously to be considered, with your project. And so these are just some resources for you here. Okay, I just want to remind everyone that the session is being recorded. The chat function is disabled, but if you have questions, please use the Q&A that is, here, and we'll go ahead and answer those as we see fit. And that the recording and a PDF of this presentation will be available soon at noaca.org/TLCI. Okay. So then we want to talk a little bit about the eligibility for applicants. So those of you who have applied to TLCI in the past couple of years should be familiar with this. If you're a new potential applicant, or if you're a grant writer working with a community or some entity, this is important to take note of. So essentially, local government entities in the NOACA region are eligible. You must have jurisdiction over your proposed project, as well as legal authority to sponsor a federal aid capital improvement project. So you really have to be able to handle federal transportation dollars for a project. Nonprofits must partner with eligible entities, and only eligible applicants can submit an application. So if you are a community development corporation working with the city must be the applicant, just because you are not able to manage a federal aid capital improvement project. So if you have questions about this, please get in touch with us and we can probably answer your questions and let you know who may be best suited. Okay, so when it comes to TLCI planning study applications, I know it's been a while since we've had applications. Oop, second here. I do have a question here. I'd like to answer real quick. The question was, what is the average cost of a TLCI planning project, and do you need justification for the proposed cost? So that's a good question. So as we're going into planning studies, this is actually good timing. So we have not held a round of planning study applications, I think, since 2021, around that time. So it's been a few years, and we have had some issues with inflation over the past few years, obviously. So the average cost of a TLCI planning project or planning study that is more locally focused and locally based is probably around $120,000 back a couple of years ago. At this point in time, I'm sure that would be inflated. It depends on the scale, honestly, of your project. The bigger the scale, the more the cost may be. We have to think about what's going into the planning study itself. And that's something that NOACA staff can work with you on. We have worked in the past and we will in the future. So if you are seeking to do like a standard corridor study, for example, and you are we really just need to think through like what the deliverables or the tasks will be for something like that. So you need to make sure that you have thorough public engagement. You need to make sure that if you're going to be doing something that moves lanes, removes lanes, adds lanes, what have you, switches lanes, turning lanes, we'll need to go ahead and have a thorough traffic study, or we'll have to have a signal warrant analysis or whatever. So you need to really kind of think of what the budget is for that piece, like any engineering. And then you have to put the document together. You have to have existing conditions. So I know I'm going into the weeds here, but I would say for a typical corridor study or a small community study, maybe $150,000, but we can kind of work with you on that. You could ask for something, and as we move through the process, if your project is to see NOACA funding, then we can go ahead and work on an appropriate budget. So, but thanks for the question. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to go back to the planning study application. So the intention of a planning study application is to support transportation planning. I know we have a lot of different types of planning out there in our region. We have a lot of great partners that do great planning, whether they are local governments, whether they're consultants that are located here, or even in the state that have done work. So there's various types of planning studies that can be done, but we're really focusing on transportation studies that address a transportation issue, problem, or lack of access. Maybe there's something that's not there that you think it should be considered for your community. We do want to look at projects that support transportation safety. I know over the past couple of years at the state level and at the federal level, especially more now, we are seeing a strong emphasis on safety, and that's great. But that is something that we could use transportation planning study dollars for. Also, you can look towards connectivity issues or gaps in facilities. So that's something that if you have something that is missing, essentially, whether it's a bicycle gap, transit gap, pedestrian gap, that could be a planning study. We look at intersection issues, corridor reconfiguration opportunities, disorganized or outdated infrastructure, neighborhood or community-based planning in general. You can look kind of like a downtown area, of a community, or the community's bicycle infrastructure or lack thereof. So you can't have a focus on a mode if that's what you need. Modal conflicts, managing infrastructure through population growth or decline. I know in Northeast Ohio, we have communities some are going through a lot of growth right now, and some have seen many years of decline. So how do you look at that infrastructure or lack thereof for the next 10, 20, 30 years, if it's kind of a mismatch with what your needs are? And then also transit access and functionality. So those are just some things. Obviously, there's way more that we can consider, but those are some things that you may want to look at regarding transportation studies. Okay, and then I do want to note here, we have a lot of planning studies. What did I say? 147, I think, that we have supported directly through this program, over the past 21 years. So they vary in size, shape, scale, what have you. So just a few of our recent studies. I know it's hard to see all these. These are just some covers. The big one there on the left is Lake Erie Connect. That was completed in 2024. It's our regional lakefront connectivity study. It's one of our most recently completed, one of our largest in scale, but it was large in scale because it looked at 3 different counties' access to Lake Erie and the various assets within the NOACA region that take people or could take people to the lake through multi-modes. So that's a recent one. But then we also have, corridor studies are pretty common, like the Elevate Euclid Green project in the city of Cleveland, which was completed a few years ago. And then we also have like the city of Avon, Sheffield Village Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, which was kind of also like similar in ways to a Safe Routes to Streets planning study. So just check out our website, the TLCI website. It'll have a lot of all of our old planning studies and new ones to get some ideas. Okay, and then that being said, I'm going to go ahead here and take us through the planning study application. So let me go ahead and switch up real quick. Second here, got to find the right page. Okay. All right. So, yeah. So now I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through kind of quickly. If you have any questions, let me know. And I do see that Leah is signed on. So, Leah, I know you're going to be going soon with the implementation material. So if you want, then you can go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone, just so I can keep going. Okay. So you're shaking your head. Yes. So thank you. Okay. So when you log on to the noaca.org/TLCI website, not really log on, but when you go on, the TLCI planning study is, there's a hyperlink for it up there. And so this is a form stack application. And so this is what it looks like. And kudos to our team here for really looking at form stack and how to zhuzh things up, because I'm not capable to put these fun images in here and make it look nice. So I really do appreciate that. It's much better than how it looked a few years back. Okay, so we try to make things as consistent as possible here with these applications. So that being said, this application is due on October 10th, 2025 by 12 p.m. I would like to note that that is the same deadline for the implementation application. So we want to keep consistent dates just to make it easy for everyone. I will say, and Leah is used to this already, but if you are having an issue with your application and submitting it on time, please send her an email. You can call her, but an email is better because of documentation purposes, and let her know that you're having issues, or if there's a piece of it missing that you can't submit or something for some reason. We're typically pretty flexible as long as you contact us before the deadline. So that means before 12 p.m., not before October 10th. So please, be in touch with Leah. She's here, she's ready for your questions, and just let her know before that deadline if you're having issues. Okay, so that being said, I'm just going to kind of scroll through here pretty quickly. A lot of this information is stuff I already went over about the TLCI planning study program. This is talking about the local match and the deadline, and then also to contact Leah if you have any issues. One thing of note is that we will have applicant presentations with NOACA staff, 30 minutes per applicant, that we'll schedule in October, late October and early November. That's kind of been consistent over the past, honestly, I want to say 8 years or so if you've applied before. So just be ready to talk to us about your project in the future. Pretty standard stuff here. We want to know your name, your address, who the project contact is. That's important. We want the right person. We don't want the mayor. No offense, mayors, unless you are the mayor of a very small place and you do everything. We really want to make sure we're able to talk to the individuals that are appropriate for NOACA staff to be talking to when it comes through this process. We also do need your title, phone number, and email address. Here, this is important. If you could just click the correct thing. We want to know if you want a consultant-led TLCI planning study or a NOACA-led TLCI planning study. So, or you could put either, honestly. So we just want to know what your preference is. And then once we go through all these applications and know, what the needs are, then we can coordinate with you and let you know what we think is best in alignment with what you recommend. So very important. Next is study name. Please keep it relatively short. I know we want to be fantastical and optimistic and exciting, but we want to know, make it relevant to where the project is and what it is kind of, it's your name, you can do what you want, but that's important to us, is to know where and what it is. Total project cost is $100,000 minimum, and then the NOACA funding requested and the total local funding committed. So that being said, like, you know, these need to add up to the 100,000, or sorry, need to add up to the total, not $100,000. So please do that. If you are requesting 100% federal funding, then you can put 0 in locally committed, but please confirm or know that if you're eligible for the NOACA toll revenue credits, if that's the case. And then please put your funding sources here. You cannot use federal transportation dollars to match federal transportation dollars. You cannot use, you know, ODOT urban paving funding to match, you know, TLCI projects. So that doesn't really, not a great example, I guess, for planning studies. That's more implementation. But I think you get the gist. And then this is an important question. From time to time, we do recommend partial funding. So, and we will have these conversations with you if we're going to recommend it before the recommendations go through the process. But please let us know if you're interested in partial funding, and you can implement it with partial funding. But that will be a discussion that we have with applicants. Then please provide us with a project location. You can kind of explain it here. And then at the end, we're going to want you to go ahead and attach a map. It can be a very simple map or complicated, whatever you have that lets us know what it is. We do look at those quite a bit during the evaluation process. And then we want you to go ahead and include the project study area, including geographic boundaries. Please be concise here, but make sure that it makes sense to us. Then we want your detailed project description. So what is the issue and why is the study needed? Next here, you can pretty much click all that makes sense for your project, the study components. So, you know, whether it's bicycle scooter, redevelopment, pedestrian transportation, land use, what have you. We don't expect you to click one of these. You probably end up, you know, clicking a few of them based on whatever your study is looking at. And then, you know, what is the description of these other things? This is to give this box here is to allow you to go to more detail in terms of what might be included in your study beyond the initial project description. Okay, and then this part is going to be kind of similar for both applications, but essentially what we do is we tie our 6 TLCI program objectives to our NOACA regional strategic goals, and we want to see how your project is going to meet those. And I should note the first one, which is worth up to 30 points, does tie those more transportation specific focus things together. So it does tie TLCI objectives 1 and 6 together, as well as a tied together regional strategic goals. So it is a little wordy, but that's to make sure that we're kind of tying things together in general. So the first one is really, how is your project going to support a transportation issue and support better access, safer systems, multimodal systems, and be more sustainable? So that's 30 points out of the total of 100 for this application. And mind you, you don't have to fill out all of these to, you know, receive points. If something does not align with your project, that's okay. That doesn't make it ineligible. So, you know, please don't fill out things just to fill them out to get points. You know, we would prefer you to, you know, say NA if something's NA. The second one here is promote reinvestment in underutilized or vacant abandoned properties through development concepts supported by multimodal transportation systems, as well as enhancing NOACA's regional goal, advancing NOACA's regional goal to enhance quality of life in Northeast Ohio. And that's worth 15 points. The third is, how does the study meet the third TLC objective to support economic development through place-based transportation and land use recommendations, and connecting those proposals with existing assets and investments to advance NOACA's regional goals to preserve existing infrastructure and support economic development. So that's worth 15 points. The fourth is, how does the proposed study meet the fourth objective to ensure the benefits and burdens of growth, change, and transportation projects are distributed fairly by integrating accessibility for all members of a community and advance NOACA's regional goals to build a sustainable multimodal transportation system and preserve existing infrastructure. This is the one that I noted earlier that we have updated the language based on executive orders. So, you know, this used to have language such as environmental justice. And as I noted, the NOACA Board of Directors is going to act on, you know, it will be this piece of this objective on September 12th. And then lastly, in this section, how does the study enhance regional cohesion by supporting collaboration between regional and community partners and advance NOACA's regional goal to strengthen regional cohesion. So this one, for example, may be one that doesn't apply to a lot of people if your project is very small and it's local in scale and scope, and that's okay. I just want to hammer home that you do not need to meet all of 5 of these in order to be recommended for funding. So lastly, for the planning studies, we want to know how you are going to manage the study and deliver its recommendations, and then include any past experience here. You can be pretty concise. For a lot of entities who've managed projects in the past, we do have a history of working with you. So you can just list projects if you'd like, or staff that have been involved. And then these are things that a lot of these things at the end are required for both applications. So Leah may be able to gloss over some of these for the implementation application, but we do want the map. Yeah, and actually anything here that has the asterisk, I believe, is a requirement. So we do require a map. We do require a council or board resolution to apply for the study and to fund any local match. This is something that you may need to submit later if you have to have 3 readings and they won't happen before the October 10th deadline. This is something we always allow more time for. Just make sure you email Leah and let her know that when that can be expected to come in. Third, we want a letter of support from the head of community or organization, like the mayor, city manager, executive director, what have you. We have this because there have been times in the past when a new mayor comes in and they cancel a project. Council may have supported it. We didn't have a letter from the mayor and they canceled it, or vice versa. So we want to make sure that this project does have sufficient support from various heads of government at your local community. Number 4, a letter of support from impacted political jurisdictions that are included in the study area but are not the project sponsor. So this would be one if you have multi-jurisdictions and one community is going to be the project sponsor. We do require concurrence from the other community that's impacted. That's really if the study area is over both communities or other communities. But that being said, we have additional letters of support. This is not required, but this is for maybe adjacent communities that, where the project isn't going to be implemented. So this is your opportunity to provide that. And then down here, we want to know if you're submitting more than one application. If you click yes, we have logic here that will then tell you what are your priorities of applications. Because we want you to let us know which one is the most important to you and the least important to you. And then you'll sign here, and then you click submit form. So if you have any questions about that, you can, let us know, but it's pretty simple to how this was years back if you've done this in the past. So that being said, I'm going to go here, and I know that we have our implementation applicant eligibility. I'm going to hand this off to Leah now. So Leah, feel free to introduce yourself and I will stop talking for once.
Hi, everyone. So sorry about earlier. We love technical difficulties. But my name is Leah Telepak. I work in the programming division here at NOACA with Jim, and I do manage the TLCI implementation program, and this year also the planning study. So Jim, I'm sure did a great job going over the history of the program and then the planning study application. We're excited to have that back in the mix this round. So I'll go over the implementation application now. So for eligibility in the implementation projects, it must be from a TLCI or TLCI-like planning study. So one that you got funded from NOACA through our TLCI program, maybe in the past, or something that's comparable. TLCI-like would be, it had a transportation focus, sufficient public engagement, that's important, including 3 public meetings focused on the specific project that you would be applying for, and countermeasures that address the transportation problem. So the implementation projects are generally low-cost infrastructure projects applied through a programmatic approach, like bicycle facilities, pedestrian infrastructure, high visibility walks, curb bump outs, traffic calming, lane configuration, and wayfinding are some examples. And then Rob will go over some of the examples just to give you like a visual of implementation projects we funded in the past, and then I'll walk you through that application. Just real quick, since we have like 15 minutes, can I go past the 4 o'clock time, or will it cut us off?
You should be able to go past.
Okay, all right, Rob, take it away.
Thanks, Leah. This is a project that was done at East 185th Street, a complete streets project. I like that it incorporates a whole lot of placemaking elements. It's a good example of how the TLCI program can support revitalization and economic development. It's a nice, you can see how it might attract people to these businesses or might attract some business development along the corridor. It also is a good example of the Green Streets policy where you can see some green areas and mulchy areas where some drainage is enhanced. Next slide, please. Here is a Brecksville Road project connecting a pedestrian trail for the Metro Parks, where the flashing beacon, I forget, the rectangular rapid flashing beacon was installed, along with a high visibility zebra crossing, and some the curb ramps were enhanced. Here's another pedestrian crossing focused project where the curb ramps were redone and the crosswalks were converted to zebra crosswalks to enhance visibility and safety. This is on Franklin Boulevard. There were several roundabouts that were installed. A lot of the roundabouts in the region you see are multi-lane and really large, but in an urban context, you can have a smaller one too. And this has greatly improved the traffic flow on that street, made it more safe and friendly for people to bike on. Definitely, I've biked on it myself. Here is a multi-use trail where the TLCI money was used to fund this bridge, which connected one side of the trail to the other and made it a more usable trail that connects two sides of basically, as I think they're two different parks, but it's kind of makes two parks into one when you have a trail connecting them, and there's also a library and some businesses on one side of it, so it's a good connectivity project. Here's another pedestrian enhancement project where new ramps were installed and higher visibility crosswalks were installed, along with some signals that you can push a button and get your walk signal. This Parma Heights project is a good example of where wayfinding signage was installed, which is another possible element to a TLCI project, along with hawk signals, where push a button and it actually has those red lights start flashing in various configurations to signal to drivers that they must stop for the pedestrians. And there's also the traffic island there. And I think back to Leah.
Thanks, Rob. I'm going to. Or are you going to do it, Jim? Thank you. Okay, so this is the TLCI implementation project application. As Jim went over with the planning study one, pretty consistent here as well in terms of it's due at the same time, October 10th by noon. The Total project cost must be at least $100,000. Our budget for implementation this round is 1.5 million, so keep those numbers in mind. And then the 80-20 split as well, and my contact information if you have any questions. So getting into the application, we'll need your contact information, just as Jim said, who the project sponsor will be, who the proper contact person will be, who's kind of going to be managing this application process on your end of things, so I know who to contact if we are missing an attachment or something like that. Project eligibility, what we went over before, it has to come from a TLCI or TLCI-like planning study. So that's important. Yeah, yes or no, and then it'll drop down with some logic to ask you more about your TLCI-like planning study, if that's the case. We ask you some questions about the planning study, if you've accomplished some projects or recommendations from your study, like to get some info on that, how that has helped your projects in your city or in your area. Project information, just the name, like Jim said, try to make it clear, concise, not like, you know, Blue River Wonderland. Instead, make it like Euclid Beach Accessibility or something like that. More precise. Your projected cost of construction, again, the $100,000 minimum, and what you're requesting with this application, and if you have any local funding committed. If not, just put 0. That's fine. You're not scored, this is a question we get, you're not scored on if you have a great local match or if you have 0 match dollars. That's not part of how we evaluate your application, so don't worry about that. And then, yeah, any other committed funding. And then we also ask about partial funding, same as with the planning study. Would you be able to implement the project if awarded partial award amount? So just, you know, if you're not sure, just pick one, and like Jim said, we can talk about it during the 30-minute virtual presentations as well. So who is anticipated to administer this project? ODOT, local agency, third-party consultant, etc. Again, if you're not sure, you can put NA or something, but it just gives us a better idea of how the project is going to be implemented, and who is anticipated to design the project. Design costs are not part of a TLCI award, but it is important to know who's going to be taking that role of the project. And then we have some questions that we haven't had in the past on implementation applications, like traffic capacity analysis questions and signal warrant analysis questions. So just be mindful of those, pay attention to what could possibly be needed there. Those have been added in because that is something that ODOT requires. So it kind of gives you a head start into the ODOT process and what they will require from you anyways. So it's good to start thinking about that now. And then the project development timeline. Again, this is all estimated, just, you know, what you think the finalizing design, when that will be, right of way, environmental, etc. Again, this gets you thinking, you know, along ODOT's lines about the project process and getting it actually implemented. Because these TLCI implementation projects, they are meant to be completed in like 18 to 24 months. So it's good to have a rough schedule in mind. And then we have some project components listed here, just examples of things that can be included in an implementation project. You can click as many boxes as you like. And then there's also an other box if you have something else that wasn't listed there. feel free to type it in the box. And then this one is very important, the detailed project description, because this is our first look at what you are actually applying for. It needs to be about the project. So we'll go back to my Blue Wonderland example. So the Euclid, accessibility per se. It will be about, we'll put in ramps so wheelchairs and strollers have accessibility, stuff like that, not it's stuff that's not pertaining to the project. It needs to be pertaining to the project, what the project is consisting of, what the vision is, what it will help. The next question adds on to that. What are the current conditions now that you're looking to change with this project? So it gives us an idea of what actually you're asking and what you're proposing with this application. And then if you're able to provide the average daily traffic, that's really helpful too, especially with like intersection improvement projects. And then if your project is a component of a larger project, provide the details of that larger project here so we know that it's not a standalone, it's connected with something else. And then we do have the TLCI objectives and the regional strategic plan goals here. Same as the planning study, but it's a little different. It's not a long answer here. You'll just select the box of the ones that you think that your project really addresses. So you can select one, you can select all of them, whatever you feel is appropriate for your project. And then please provide a brief description in this box of how your project addresses the objectives of the boxes that you clicked. And then we also like to know what the maintenance plan is of this project. If it's a multi-purpose trail, who's maintaining that trail? The city, metro parks, etc. So just let us know what that future maintenance plan is. And then important attachments, as Jim went over with the planning study, we'll need a map, the board resolution or council resolution, letters of support, all those things you'll have to collect and attach with your application. As Jim said, the asterisk is required. So if you see at number 4, detailed line item construction cost estimate, very important here. Please try to include a recommended 10% contingency and use estimate inflation for the pricing to the year of the implementation. That's always something we go over each year. And I know it's kind of tricky, but just, do your best. And then you see attachment number 5, that's not required. You can include it if you'd like, but it's not required. Additional letters of support, your traffic capacity analysis if applicable, signal warrant if applicable. And then are you submitting more than one implementation application? If so, just like planning studies, please prioritize so we know which one is like the top prioritization for you. And then make sure that you get a signature and then submit, and you've submitted your implementation application.
So the street supplies program is independent of the TLCI program, but we wanted to present information about it because they work well as companions together. We have a library of supplies that can be used to implement quick build pop-up projects that can be range in duration from like a weekend to being sort of semi-permanent, because we do, as you can see in these pictures, have paint as part of the supplies. And of course, once the paint's down, that's a little bit more than just a weekend of duration. Next slide, please. Here's some examples of content that we have. We have paint and tape, like I said. We have signs. We have street furniture that would probably be more for like one of those weekend projects, but also maybe you want to test out, how much a bench gets usage, and maybe the bench would be something that would be a more permanent bench would come in the future, and or traffic safety devices like bollards and whatnot. So we sort of envision that you might want to use some of these to either kind of like before, during, and after TLCI studies, or to see how implementation projects might play out, were they fully funded and committed to. So you might explore, do we want to study in this area, and try out a few things and see how they work out, and that may tilt the needle to trying a study in this area, or figuring out the nature of a study you may want to do in an area. And then during a study, you may want to include before and after data of implementing certain aspects of a project to see, informing the results of the study. Or once you've completed a study, maybe you want to try out a project that becomes a recommendation from the study prior to actually applying for funding for it. Or even if you apply for funding and don't get funding, maybe you want to implement it temporarily and then apply again for the next round, and that might bolster your case to show that, hey, we've built this, it works well, we have community support, and that might bolster your next application. So there are a lot of stages at which this could play a role. Next slide, please. Here are some project ideas that have been done. You can have a parklet or various types of bike lanes, buffered bike lanes, protected bike lanes. The bollards come into play. You can have traffic calming measures like chicanes or curb extensions. You can pretty up your crosswalks with some paint, do some placemaking stuff on the sidewalks too. You can have rubber refuge islands or speed tables or even mini roundabouts. Nearly anything that you can do permanently, you can do temporarily. So the sky's sort of the limit. And next slide, please.
Hey, Rob, I just wanted to note real quick. These are great for street supplies, these enhanced crosswalks and curb extensions with the designs, but just keep note that, when it comes to federal dollars, these are things that may not be able to be implemented permanently. They have to align with ODOT's guidelines. So these are great for temporary, and even if they're locally funded, in certain locations, they're fine. But, we've had requests in the past for the TLCI implementation program to do some more artistic things, and those are not always an option. So just wanted to, set expectations.
Good point. Thank you. So again, I said this is separate from TLCI, and if you have a project that you're interested in trying out quickly or implementing quickly, and whether it's part of your concept of what you want to do for a TLCI project or not, we welcome applications to get street supplies. We have a lot of stuff on hand. If we don't have on hand what you need, then there's a good chance that we can order things. And yeah, we're happy to help however we can, and we can actually typically turn around pretty quickly on project applications and get something, boots on ground, get paint on ground, etc. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap up the last few slides here. I know we are at 4 o'clock, so in interest of time, I'm just going to take a minute or two here. So as a reminder, all applications are due on October 10th by noon. If you cannot meet that, if you're having issues at the end, of the application process around the 9th or the 10th, and you can't get something in or there's a problem, just contact Leah Telepack, let her know, and then she can coordinate with you on that. We then do, the NOACA staff does review applications for eligibility, and then we do have a team who evaluates and scores the applications. We then make our recommendations to the NOACA Planning and Programming Committee in 2026. At this point, we would expect that to be at the January 2026 committee, but sometimes it is delayed by a quarter. And then we expect the board of directors to make their final decision in 2026, most likely March. And then staff will work with awardees to program projects with ODOT. And then also that's more for implementation, but also we'll also work with you on getting the project started if it's a planning study. One thing to note, we do have our virtual discussions or presentations with all applicants. So after your application is submitted, Leah will reach out to you to schedule a 30-minute period of time for you to provide us with information, whether it's images, or we can look at Google Maps or what have you, just to learn about the project, where it is, what it is. So NOACA staff can ask questions about it. And so we can be on the same page. We talk about timing and what can and can't happen with the federal dollars and NOACA criteria. Okay, all the projects are out of 100 points. They have to align with TLCI objectives and strategic goals. And then the project maintenance plan for the implementation, and then for the planning studies, past experience of managing a study. I should note that ODOT is involved in the process. So when it comes to TLCI implementation projects, as with other construction projects that are funded through NOACA or federal funds, note if it's ODOT or local administrator if you can. Something new as of last year is ODOT's new conflict of interest form. So we want to make sure that the project manager is not the same as the project designer. There are other things tied to that, but that is kind of the high level. So please make sure you are aware of that. If you have questions, let us know, or we can pass you on to your ODOT district office. And then when it comes to implementation, we do expect to have the project scoped, planned, and programmed with the district office. And then hopefully we will, it'll take no more than 18 months for a project to be developed to an award to be constructed. So if you have questions, ODOT's website is there about the project development process. LPAs essentially must meet ODOT criteria. It has to be on full-time staff with your community in charge of the project, and you have to go through ODOT's modules and training modules to be LPA certified for a local led project. So if you have questions, let us know, or your local ODOT district. Okay, schedule here. Today is September 3rd. This is our webinar, which will be posted on our website. Applications are due October 10th. We will present the applications through our advisory councils and some subcommittees in October, November, and December. And then we expect to make our recommendations at the January Planning and Programming Committee with a March board approval. Things may change, but that's what we're expecting at this point in time. All right, questions, go to Leah Telepack, or if you have any here, I know we're over time, but we can answer live for you as well. I see a thank you.
Everyone. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I don't see anything coming in, which I appreciate the questions during. We appreciate all that. Feel free to reach out to Leah if you have any questions about applications, the program, the schedule, what's needed, what have you. So she's very good at getting back to everyone on time, and we appreciate it. So this will be recorded. This recording will be located on our website soon. So, all right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.